If you're running SEO and PPC campaigns at the same time, I have a solution that will save you some money. I'm talking with Chris Ridley and talking about his solution that will save you money on your PPC and SEO on this week's episode.
Every day we check your organic ranking. If you go above that 4 into the 3s, we pause you. If you drop below 3, we turn you back on. Exactly that. The tool we built is essentially making sure that in the cases where that is happening, you can stop that and minimize that as much as possible, while still giving you the freedom to decide if you don't want to implement that tool. Every marketer needs to start asking is, what is our business objective? Not marketing strategy, not marketing objective, but business objective. Where does the business want to go? Having your ads at the top to protect your brand so people can see the true you in those SERPs is crucial.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Search with Candour. I am your host, Jack Chambers-Ward, and this is the podcast where I interview the best and brightest in SEO and search marketing. This week I am joined by the one and only Chris Ridley from Evoluted, and we're talking all about how PPC and SEO can sometimes cannibalize each other, and Chris has a solution that will basically stop you overspending on your PPC campaigns if you are ranking really well organically. As we talk about so much these days, the SERPs are incredibly important. There is so much competition from other things outside of just the traditional organic rankings. And Chris and the team at Evoluted have got a really, really cool solution that if you are running SEO and PPC campaigns will save you money, to put it simply, basically. And if you haven't already, please do like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave us a comment and a rating on Spotify. Leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts as well, or wherever you're listening or watching to Search with Candour. I always appreciate every comment, every like, every post, every comment, every share. If you haven't already, share this episode around. If you know somebody who is running both SEO and PPC and you think they could save some money from Chris's solution, they're the right person to share it with. Share it around. Spread the good word. Basically, I'm recommending you do that because I think this is a genuine solution that could save you a lot of time, a lot of hassle, and a lot of money as well. Anyway, without further ado, here is my conversation with the one and only Chris Ridley coming up right now. You may recognize my guest this week from speaking at some fantastic conferences such as PPC Live, Brighton SEO, and Sheffield DM. He has also been a guest on the brilliant Marketing O'Clock podcast, which I talk about regularly on this show, where he was named one of the top 50 most influential PPCers and, most importantly, won Meme of the Year at the Clockskers. He is the head of paid media at Evoluted. Welcome to Search with Candour, Chris Ridley.
Thank you, Jack. It's great to be here. What a great intro.
I try my best on the intros, mate. And I mentioned your talk at Brighton SEO. We actually met very briefly at Brighton SEO as well. We recorded a little video that I am in the process of editing for Also Asked. And we talked about PMAX and we discussed some PPC things because you are one of the PPC guys. And me as an SEO person, I feel like we're going to have a really interesting conversation today because it kind of ties both industries together, right? And it's based on what you talked about at Brighton, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a bit of a varied background in marketing. I did a little bit of SEO to begin with, and I've always wanted to kind of bring the two sides together. So my Hero Conference, Brighton SEO Talk, was all about bringing them together and a tool to help that. And yeah, great to just be able to sit with you and talk about it as well as a SEO and a PPC guy in a virtual room together.
Yeah, exactly. I'm almost the opposite round. I very briefly did PPC at the beginning of my career and then kind of went off and specialized in SEO. So I haven't properly touched PPC in 5 years now. My previous agency before I joined Candour, I did a PPC. That was the last time I properly did it. So I'm trying to keep myself up to date by following people like yourself and following Anu and PPC Live and Marketing O'Clock and those guys and keeping up to date with what's going on. But I really liked your topic and the way we're going to kind of tie both together is this whole concept of search cannibalisation, right? And I know we're going to get into the details and the tool you and the team over at Evoluted have developed to get an idea of how to make sure people aren't paying for things twice, essentially. Well, that was kind of the key takeaway. This is going to save you money so you're not optimizing for a keyword and also bidding on that kind of keyword at the same time from a paid perspective, and kind of balance your organic and paid strategies, right? Have I got the very, very broad concept right there?
Yeah, you've got it spot on. Big thing we saw with some of our clients was they didn't want to run Google Ads because they were afraid of it stealing their organic traffic, or we saw it was stealing their traffic when we first took on the account. So uh, the tool we built is essentially making sure that in the cases where that is happening, you can stop that and minimize that as much as possible, while still giving you the freedom to decide if you don't want to implement that tool. So,
Yeah, I think it's a big discussion, especially if you're working, if you're an internal team and you're working on both sides of things, and there's hopefully a lot of communications. Speaking of Anu, that was a big conversation I had with Anu on the show a few months ago, is how SEO and PPC teams need to be communicating more. Basically, we have a lot more in common than we like to admit sometimes. I think there's often a lot of conflict, and like you said, don't steal my traffic is kind of the gist, and lots of fist shaking between the two teams. But I really like the idea of having that kind of concept of where you are, and the bigger picture thing of where you are in terms of organic and where you are in terms of paid. And sometimes they can be different audiences, sometimes there can be a lot of crossover, but that won't happen unless you're communicating with the people who are handling that side of things. And I think what you guys are doing with that side, and again, I'm going to try and oversimplify this and keep it super simple before we get into the details. It's where if you're ranking in positions 1 to 3, you turn off Google Ads essentially for those search terms and those keywords. But if your ranking drops below that, the ads kick in, right? That's the very, very broad kind of high level concept of it.
yeah, absolutely. It works for the search ads. So at the moment, we leave the shopping ads as they are, and you can set that threshold as well. So if 3 is too high or too low for you, you can change that. But in essence, that's what it is. Every day we check your organic ranking. If you go above that 4 into the 3s, we pause you. If you drop below 3, we turn you back on. Exactly that.
Nice. And why do you think you said it? Obviously, it's adjustable. Of course, it would need to be. I'm sure with many clients having different opinions and things like that. But do you think that third position is kind of the sweet spot in the cutoff point?
When we first used the tool with our client Puckstop, a brick and mortar and online ice hockey equipment retailer. It was before AI overview was rolled out widely, and we actually saw that positions 1 to 3 appeared above the fold on a lot of the searches they had. On average, it was around 60-70% of their searches. You got the third organic one before the fold. That's why we chose it. Looking at it now with Overview AI, like we're actually tweaking it down to 2 because we've seen that it's pushed everything down the page, and now you're only seeing the second organic, and that really is why we're going to be changing it. But yeah, 3 was the sweet spot. It's now going to be 2. We might have to change it again with any other changes Google brings out as well. So
I know we were just talking about it, and we won't go into any details, but at time of recording, Google I/O has just happened, and everybody's freaking out about AI overviews and AI mode and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's really good to have it be adaptable in that way, because I think a lot of people will come up with a solution or build a particular thing from an initial case study. And I've seen plenty of other tools do this in the past, right? Of, oh, we have this thing, this worked with one client, apply the blanket solution to everybody and actually not have a flexible way of doing it. So I think it's a really good idea to be aware of what's on the SERPs, again, from an paid and organic perspective, and what's taking up SERP real estate, which I think is a big conversation that's been happening a lot recently when it comes to, like you said, having what is actually above the fold and what you're going to see first. It used to be that higher rankings, even the third position, would be pretty valuable. If that's below the fold now, is that seen as less valuable to a lot of users? I would assume so by default as a user myself, right? And I think having that adaptability to be able to shift it to only if you're ranking first or only if you're ranking first or second can make a big difference. And I know I have definitely been guilty, or I've seen and worked with teams where we've had both running at the same time and been aware of like, wait, are you creating content for this like search term and this kind of cluster? It's like, yeah. I was like, we're bidding on that as well, right? It's like, oh, right, okay. We haven't had a talk about this. Let's have a talk about this now before I finish and spend too much time and too much money on this campaign.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And I don't want to get into it too much because I'm going to mention it later. But one of the things PPCers are guilty of is looking at the Google Ads or Microsoft Ads platform and not actually looking at the SERP, not seeing the things changes. While SEOs are completely different. They are aware of every change on the SERP because they have to. And that's where that communication, that collaboration between the two teams can actually help everyone. Because you could then actually go, you know what, we can't appear above the fold because you've got overviews, you've got map packs, you've got local businesses, you know, can you get there for us? And that's when PPC can be like, yes, we can, and they can help, you know, and this is in theory an automated version of doing that with your organic team.
Yeah, I really like that. Like you said, the kind of balance you have to find there on the SERPs. And to be fair, I will hold my hand up as an SEO here and say, like, we are totally guilty of not checking the SERPs enough as well. Obviously, I think we do pay traditionally more attention to it than PPC is, but there are plenty of SEOs who are head in the sand, kind of focused on what's happening on my site, what's happening on this thing, only looking at their search console or looking at their third-party tools or whatever it is, and not actually getting stuck into the SERPs. And I think that's going to have to be a pretty key skill moving forward, as we're seeing, like you said, the shift with so many SERP features, even featured snippets and map packs and local packs and knowledge graphs and all that kind of stuff we've seen added over the last 10 years or so. And now seeing more things like AI views, AI mode, all that kind of thing. From that kind of client communication perspective, what was the kind of process of discussing that with the client and saying, we think this is a good idea, we said this is why you should be doing that? Was that kind of a requirement from a client who came and said, hey, we're thinking we're already doing both from a paid organic perspective? Or was it you guys coming to them and thinking, actually, we think this is a good idea and here's why it's a good idea?
Yeah, so the way it happened was Hooksup have been a long-term valuable client of Evoluted. On the SEO side, we've been doing their organic ranking, their website optimization for years. And we've recently migrated them to Shopify. The migration saw a few of the rankings drop. It happened during algorithm updates as well, which knocked them about. And they wanted to regain their presence as they just signed a new deal with Bauer, a big product supplier to the ice hockey industry. And they needed to secure that top spot again and secure their marketplace online. They had Google Ads years and years ago in the past, and they saw the cannibalisation happen, and it kind of scarred them, and they didn't want to go back, and they were skeptical. They tried paid social. Attribution wasn't there for them in terms of reporting. It was after the Apple cookie consent changes and everything with iOS. So we then just approached them going, how about if we do Google Ads, but we can, to a certain degree, guarantee it doesn't cannibalize traffic. At the point, we didn't have this solution in mind. We were going to get the yes and then sit down, work it out before we sign anything. We just needed to know there was an opportunity there first, you know. And then me and the organic team, shout out to Dan Pierce on the team, who works with me on it, and Jake, who was in the team at the time as well. We worked out how to put it together. Dan did all the API integration as well, and we tested out beforehand, checked the tool was working, and we rolled it out across the accounts. So it was kind of we have a problem, let's think of a solution, create the solution, and keep working on it till it works.
I think that's how a lot of good tools are made, right? I mean, that's a big part of why Mark and the team and the developers here created Also Asked. Like, we're already using people Also Asked data for a lot of our content strategies anyway. We're using that as a source of information from what consumers and users are searching for. So why not create a tool that is available for other people to use, for clients to use, all that kind of stuff, right? I think it's the right way to approach it when you go from a almost like consumer first approach and a problem first approach, rather than coming in with, I have a tool, here's how I can sell it to you, rather than, I know you have a problem and here's how I can fix it for you, right?
Exactly. And the reason we've rolled it out publicly so everyone can have the free version of it is because it's a problem many businesses face, and we want to make sure they all have a solution to hand to fix, and then we can get feedback on how to improve it, and that's where it kind of rolls from there.
Nice. Yeah. So let's get into the details, mate. Let's dive into some. You mentioned Google Ads, you mentioned some rank tracking and stuff like that. What components, what various bits of software do you actually need? You mentioned APIs as well. How are we actually implementing this stuff? What's the actual process of going through and checking those rankings and pausing and starting those ads?
Yeah, so right now you just need three things. An ad platform, we're using Google Ads in this example. An SEO ranking tool, like a monitor tool like Ahrefs, SEO Monitor, and others. We're using SEO Monitor in this example. And a spreadsheet, and we're using Google Sheets. And the way that it works is this Google Sheet will combine the data of your Google keywords and your organic keyword rankings, pair it together, and where you can manually adjust it and pair it yourself. And then we fire it all back into Google Ads via JavaScript that will then check the Google Sheet daily and match the ad status to the ranking. So if your organic ranking is 1, 2, or 3, it will make sure your ad is paused. If it's 4, 5, 6, it'll turn it back on for you. So the only real solutions you need is a SEO Monitor tool or similar tool with an API that you can feed into Microsoft Ads, feed into Google Ads by Google Sheets, and then just a little bit of script that we provide that you can put into JavaScript Google Ads.
Very cool. Yeah, and it seems like such a, I don't know, it seems like a nice, simple solution, right? I think you're approaching the right way without trying to overcomplicate it too much. And I think a lot of people get into the bad habit of trying to do 15 different things at once and try and do that side of things. I guess some of my questions come into, I think we're talking a lot less about search terms in terms of organic at the moment. We're kind of talking a lot about intent and talking a lot about clustering and all that kind of stuff as well. How are you guys going about matching the organic side of things from SEMrush, Ahrefs, SEO Monitor, whatever it is, and then counteracting that to well, like lining up, I guess, with the Google Ads side of things? Because I think those two tools might categorize things in different ways. I guess it might depend on the match type of the ad as well, right? Does it depend on what you're doing from a PPC perspective as well?
Yeah, it's a challenge we actually face. And in my Hero Conference talk, I put a little Spider-Man meme where they're each pointing at each other. And what that is a Google Ads keyword pointing at two different organic search terms that are both eligible for it. And the solution we had was, one, we currently manually match the Google Ads keyword to one of the search terms you're tracking on the SEO side. The reason we say one is because one of your organic keywords is rank 1 and one of them is rank 4. Depending on the order you labeled them, it will depend on the status that keyword gets. So the way we look at it is, one, check how different the two SERPs are. 60, 70% of the time, they are roughly near enough the same. You have near enough the same rank. And then I would go with the one that is more volatile, and the one that gets the most traffic. So if the one that gets you the most traffic, I would use that one. Because if you appear a little bit to the other one, it's not too much of a concern because you want to protect the bread and butter. And so that's the way we go about it. It's a manual labeling system where you use Google Ads labels at keyword level. And it's a manual checking of the SERP. We are looking at ways where we can streamline this for people, whether that is getting a new column added that will tell you whether you're above or below the fold, maybe pull stuff through from the API that tells you about what other featured snippets are appearing within the SERP. So you can understand, okay, how far are you potentially pushed down? And also if Overview AI is involved, because recent data came out during recording where they were saying something like there's 34% fewer clicks happening since Overview AI has been released, despite Google stating they think it will generate more searches and more clicks. So
yeah, Google has definitely been pushing it's more searches than ever, more clicks than ever. Don't worry, everything's fine. I'm like, yeah, not quite. And I think a lot of people are struggling with that, especially the position tracking side of things. It seems to be, I don't know, John Mueller commented on this recently and confirmed it. In most rank tracking tools, it will be one position for an entire AI overview, despite it including double digits of links. No matter whether you're the top link in that list or you're the 12th list in link in that list, you will still be position one according to Google Search Console. So that's the kind of thing that those rank tracking tools might be pulling through. So when it comes to that sort of things, I think like the evolution, to use a pun from Evoluted, of that tool, actually working out, getting almost like a snapshot or a screenshot of what is and above the fold as things are changing. You mentioned volatility. Like, we know that AI overviews are incredibly volatile and can change length depending on user. I know, again, we're not going to get into the whole conversation about personalization, but that seems to be a whole thing that is going to be happening on SERPs in the near future as well, especially from a shopping perspective. Having a less like ranking based thing, because I think that's going to be trickier to track in the future, right? Actually having a viewport, actual fold kind of idea of, okay, this is what the user is seeing, pause and unpause kind of thing, is a really clever way of approaching it. And I think that might be the kind of future proofing you'll need when it comes to more and more AI powered SERP features in the future, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There will be some people that still, work towards rankings and all that, and that's where we can leave this existing feature in. But when it comes to actually, okay, is overview AI in play here? Okay, what we might want to put our ads on, regardless, just help us there. They might also go, okay, are we above the fold, below the fold, and change it there. In the future, we also want to make it less binary, so you can actually adjust the bid value or the aggressiveness of your advertising in terms of impression share based on factors as well. So you can be like, okay, I've dropped out of the top one slot. I want to be super aggressive and kind of get my ad up there instead. You can also do it based on maybe other groups as well. So whether it's your brand term or whether it is a new product or service you're pushing, you can then actually incrementally increase or decrease your bids as well based on what the SERP is doing at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I think when it comes to that kind of, like we said, the kind of intent concept that we talk about so much in SEO, and the way we're kind of clustering and grouping keywords now and kind of making that together, I think a lot of discussion happens with SERP similarity stuff, like how much crossover is there between a similar keyword and another similar keyword. If you're just changing the color of a product or changing the location or the size or the whatever, how much of those SERPs are actually crossing over. And I've seen some great tools. I know Systrix do that. I know Keyword Insights do that. There's a lot like SERP comparison tools and stuff like that. And I find that stuff, like almost like a Venn diagram visualization, a really good way to get an idea, like you said, actually look at the SERP and see what is going on and how much of that there's a kind of crossover between those terms, right? And I think it works really well for kind of clustering things by intent. It's like, okay, yeah, it seems that 8 out of the 10 top results seem to be the same for these two similar keywords. Maybe kind of group those together and kind of cluster them in that way, right? And then you've got a broader understanding of what the intent is behind that, and you can kind of categorize things a bit better. Whereas I think a lot of people just get bogged down in 10,000 keywords and, oh, this is, the words themselves are similar. It's like, yeah, sure, but are the SERPs changing? Is the search different? Does Google think it is similar or less similar to another search? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really interesting because in Google Ads, we're going the opposite way. We're consolidating everything. And we're kind of going, you know what, we don't need to look at tens of thousands of keywords. Let's put them into themes. We can't even see keyword level whether red and blue performs differently because we're using broad match keywords where we're just going for, medium-sized t-shirt or something, or, like gym vest. We're not even putting color and size in. We're letting Google do all that. So it's really interesting, like how this tool and how us as marketers are going to adapt to that. Are we going to worry so much about certain, n-grams and certain long tail keywords here? Or are we going to focus on the grouping and Google Ads help document about how they prioritize keywords. It's really interesting in terms of the differences in phrases. A common one used is chocolate milk and milk chocolate. There's both got the same two words, but they've got completely different meanings. And another one I saw that they use in their article was skydiving course, skydiving certification, and skydiving license. They say black and white that license and certification are more similar to each other than certification and course, which is a real nice insight into how Google looks at words and how they pair it. And that's only two
definitely.
examples.
I think. Well, yeah, I think they're really good examples. Like it's such a the milk chocolate milk thing is such an easy way of visualizing, even though we don't really use the phrase chocolate milk here in the UK. That's more of an American thing. But all search examples from Google are American, as we've learned from. I think they mentioned some baseball thing at Google I/O, and I was just like, no idea what you mean. I texted Mordy being like, what the hell are they talking about, Mordy? Like, you're my go-to baseball expert. And there's that, almost like when you start breaking it down too much, like you said, when you get down to the engrams and the long tail stuff, and it seems to be that a lot of the new search features AI have used and that kind of stuff is very much targeting that stuff. Right? They talk about deep search and targeting those more complex questions. Exactly as you were saying there, from the PPC side of things, you guys are finding a lot of keywordless stuff, right? You're not even having the option to do that. I know we talked about PMAX, Performance Max, briefly at Brighton SEO, and there's been a lot of talk, I know, from following you and speaking to Greg Finn a few weeks ago as well. AI Max, Search Max, the new thing that Google is teasing for the next layer of PPC stuff. Do you think that is going to be still applicable in the same way, like having an idea of how to contrast what we're searching for organically and what we're searching for from a pay perspective? How do you kind of balance PMAX and Search Max arriving and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so in terms of how we work out what we're targeting within Google Ads with a AI Max for search, and as it hasn't rolled out to all of the UK yet or globally yet, I can't talk about the specifics of how that would work, but I know that one of the tools we're looking to bake into our system is an account level negative keyword list that gets automatically updated based on which organic rankings you have high. So we can go, okay, if you don't want any of your ads to appear, whether that is shopping, whether that is Performance Max, whether that is AI Max for search, apply this negative keyword list to the campaign or account level, and every morning it will add and remove keywords from that negative keyword list based on your organic ranking. So that is a thing we can do. And then obviously, instead of ranking, it can be based on keywords above and below the fold. And so that is how we can kind of help keep that balance in terms of how advertisers will know what they're targeting and how they can push the targeting. You're going to have to start using a lot of negative keywords if you're doing keywordless targeting. Also got to use your audiences a lot better as well, making sure you're niching it down, saying, right, I want to target people looking for mortgages, but I want to target people who are already homeowners and are moving. So you're looking at a remortgage rather than a first-time buyer. You're going to have to do it that way. You could then leave the keywords to do whatever it wants. You should put those parameters in place.
Yeah, I think, again, it feels, in some way, it feels like PPC and SEO are diverging, but I think in a lot of ways they're still coming together in many ways as well. That feels like a conversation we're having a lot, again, when it comes to all this AI-powered stuff and the way people are interacting with things like Search GPT, Perplexity, all that kind of stuff. There is definitely almost, it feels like a keywordless way of searching, that the conversational nature of search that people are adapting to now. From my perspective as an SEO, I think that's fascinating, and I would love to get some data. Please, Google, start giving us filters on Search Console so we can see this stuff. That would be lovely. I know, credit to Dana Di Tommaso and a few other people who have built like reports and stuff you can use on GA4 to get an idea of the kind of things you're getting from LLMs. But I want to get in the data, I want to see the kind of things. And as much as it is basically like voice search, and I feel like I've joked about that a million times on the podcast at this point, it's just finally voice search made real, as everyone's saying for the last 10 years. It feels like keywordless searching, whether that's from a paid perspective or an organic perspective, is something we're going to have to deal with. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to be Google just refusing to give us the data. Like, they have no obligation to give us new filters on Search Console. They are under no obligation to give us any sort of access to any sort of data whatsoever. It's probably within their best interest in many ways, especially from a pay perspective, which is where they make the vast majority of their money. They don't really give a shit about the organic side of things, though. We're us little SEOs are small fry compared to you PPC guys, as far as Google is concerned. So, are you kind of excited about that as the future for, first impressions and thoughts about AI Max and this potential keywordless future? Or are you kind of worried that it's kind of freak out some clients and maybe have that difficult conversation like, so we're not doing keywords anymore, and here's why?
From a marketing point of view, overall, I think moving away from keywords is the best thing. Like, we should be aligning everything we do to a business's business objective. Whether that's our client, whether that's our employer, whether that is ourselves as freelancers, we should be focusing on what the business wants to achieve. And it rarely comes down to a keyword or individual like ad copy. It comes down to where the users are in the journey and what they need to kind of get them to the next step. If you need to build your brand awareness, like, you don't need keywords for that. You need audiences, and you need to know who to target, when to target, and what messaging. So as someone who kind of looks at it from a macro level, like, I think removing keywords as a focus, especially for clients in Google Ads, going, why aren't you targeting this keyword? Why aren't you targeting that? 9 out of 10 times there's a really good reason why your agency or your in-house PPC person isn't targeting a keyword. It's because they've tried it, they haven't got good traffic from it, or it's too competitive and you can't afford it. So moving to topics and moving to, other aspects is the way forward. It's interesting you mentioned about Google having no need to give you more filters, because in the last couple of announcements in Google Ads, we've actually been seeing more reporting and more transparency on data be granted to us after years of everything being taken away from us. And it is really welcome to, we've had reporting improvements and improved asset reports announced during the AI Max for search, where we can report on cost and conversions at headline level, which is brilliant. We haven't had that for the last 3 years. And it should have been a basic requirement. We should have been given that when Performance Max rolled out. So it's interesting that organic feel like they're not going to get more data transparency, while the PPC side feels like we are getting more again. So really interesting.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know if that's necessarily Google playing favorites. Again, not to start the SEO versus PPC wars or anything like that, but you guys make them all the money, right? There is a pretty clear thing. They're under no real obligation to give us any organic data, but it is very much within their business interests to tie it into what you're saying there. In terms of business goals and revenue and all that kind of stuff, Google cares about ads. Google cares about advertisers and their opinions. And I know, again, something I talked about with Greg a few weeks ago was that Google are getting better at actually receiving feedback and taking it on board and stuff like that. Credit where credit is due. A lot of the PPC liaison people are doing a really good job of actually listening to you guys and actually saying, yeah, that does make sense. Let's do this. And it's very nice to see a positive direction of data after I feel like we lost a lot when we went from Universal Analytics to GA4 and cookieless tracking and all that kind of stuff, right? We had it too good for too long, and maybe a little bit too much data, some might say, for a little bit too long. So it's nice to see. I think there is still a positive side to that. And like you said, if you are still just optimizing for keywords and that is your KPI, you're going to get left behind if you haven't been already, right? In 2025, that's probably not something that should be the key part of any organic or paid strategy at all. Is like, rank me for these 5 keywords, job done.
Yeah, a big thing that every marketer needs to start asking is, what is our business objective? Not marketing strategy, not marketing objective, but business objective. Where does the business want to go? That way you can then like go down and get more niche and go, okay, for marketing, we need to do this. For these channels, we need to do this. And something that Evoluted we're doing with a lot of our clients, we're providing really strategic reviews with them. And we're doing it for free consultation as well for potential new clients, just so they can understand what they need. Because a lot of clients will go to an agency or hire internally, going, we need to do Google ads. But when in fact what they need is brand awareness, and they'd be better off with organic search, organic social and digital PR, or they're like, we need more sales, and they pump out a load of content that doesn't appear to the right people because it's just consumed by their existing customers. So it's really interesting, all of that, and how as marketers we need to start that shift. And that way, if Google doesn't give us the data, it doesn't matter too much because we're going to be making bigger decisions on a bigger scale. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it, mate. And I think that's to, again, kind of play the devil's advocate to your side of things. When we're looking at the paid and organic side of things, is there an advantage to, you said, build that brand awareness, totally own a SERP from start to finish, top to bottom kind of thing, as much as you can with AI overviews and whatever? But do you think there would be cases or particular things where clients would want to say, yeah, we want to keep bidding because we want to maintain those high positions with the paid ads, which are always going to be above the organic, and keep drilling down and making sure we're, kicking ass in the organic side of things as well?
Absolutely. There will be some cases, and brand is a really good example here. Brand is somewhere there. A lot of businesses are either we want to bid on it no matter what, or we don't want to bid on it no matter what. It's always kind of a Marmite decision. And for those who have high competition, where competitors might do sneaky stuff and use your brand name within the ad copy, or use a misspelling and all that, and send them to a page where it is comparing your services type thing.
I've seen that plenty of times.
Having your ads at the top to protect your brand so people can see the true you in those SERPs is crucial, especially if you can see that your organic clicks are dropping, when these SERPs are appearing, when these results are appearing. You want to make sure that the overall traffic to your website from Google, whether that is paid or organic, is going up or down overall. And that's what you kind of need to look at.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I think, like you said, there's going to be examples of brands that want to take over social as well as search. And I think we're, again, hopefully evolving outside of just Google is search. I think a lot of people, and including Google themselves, have had a bit of a fire lit under them of like, by the way, ChatGPT and a bunch of other stuff are here, and they're probably here to stay, whether you like it or not. I think the same is true for social stuff as well. You mentioned paid and organic social earlier, like being a perfect example. A big conversation I was having last year is that whole kind of multi-channel, fully faceted marketing approach to it. So you're not just doing organic and nothing else, and you're not just doing paid and nothing else. The old adage that you need to be seen in multiple places, and that's even more true, and the numbers are even higher now than they ever have been before. I think it's like Renee Bigelow quoted like 20 to 40 times, I think it was, in terms of, I will see an Instagram and then an organic result and then a Google ad result and then something on TikTok and then something on Facebook and then something on Blue Sky, etc., etc., etc. Then a billboard, then a bus ad, then a this, then a that, over and over and over again. We're so bombarded with places for space for advertising, essentially, right? We're so on our phones, on our screens, in our daily lives. I think it's more important than ever to be aware of where you're being seen and who you're being seen by. Going back to what you said right at the beginning, mate, of like where your customers are. What are your customers actually looking at? Are you advertising? Does it make sense for you to do a paid social campaign if your audience don't care about those particular platforms? Or could that be the most relevant thing you could be doing right now and you just haven't realized it? I think there's a big conversation there where brands need to be aware of where they're being seen, and maybe, again, as you said earlier, opportunities where they haven't been seen and they could be doing so, right? I think that's where a lot of that PPC SEO crossover and social and email and all the other aspects like come together. And we all need to kind of be having that conversation now, hopefully. A lot of us are having that conversation and we're kind of working a bit better together, hopefully.
Yeah, I think especially with attribution, kind of no one's trusting any attribution, especially with GA4, where it's completely different attribution to what we had in Universal Analytics. Google ads running on GA4 goals, but showing different numbers to what shows up in GA4. Like, it is kind of sowing a mistrust in the attribution models. And I think the best way to kind of avoid that in the long term is kind of being agnostic to channels. Okay, I'm not going to just, fight for you to get paid search. Let's look at what you need. Do you need brand awareness? Let's get onto organic social. Work out where your clients are going to be, though, your customers. TikTok isn't for everyone. And there was a craze the last few years where every business jumped onto TikTok, and they were putting out content that like either wasn't on their original brand guidelines or wasn't really representing their business. They were just doing the trends, and you then get lost in the noise. And it's actually working out, okay, who is on that platform we want to target and what content do they want to see? And if you do an organic piece, you can then run it as paid social. You could then put it onto, try it as a YouTube short or try it as a Instagram reel, you can then try to roll it out that way, repurpose it. And you see a lot of people do it with podcasts. They do a film and they then turn it into a reel or a short or a TikTok to give people sound bites to get them coming back. And exactly. And Marketing O'Clock do it as well. And it reminds me when to go back and watch it, which is great. And businesses need to start looking at it that way. We've had conversations for years now with people saying putting too many eggs in one basket. People have done it with Google and they took advantage, shaking the cushion, as the phrase was, getting as much money from us as possible. Because it felt like we wouldn't go anywhere else, and as marketers, as businesses, we should look at diversifying it. And instead of going, this is the attribution we get from this channel, this is what we get from this channel, take a step back and go, our marketing mix is bringing us this return on investment, And I know it's going to be harder to work out which aspects of your marketing isn't working and is working, but that's where you can A/B test. That's why you can get your experts to go into the data and kind of look at that, look at the multi-channel, funnels that we have in GA4, where you can see what channel people have contacted you through. And I think that's the way to go forward, is kind of look at it more, holistic rather than channel-based. And it's a way that everyone's fed into that role of going channel-based, because that's how we've learned to communicate. Oh, I need Google Ads. Oh, I need SEO. Or I need this. Like, no, you need more customers, or you need to be more profitable, or you need to sell more. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, having that conversation, even with a brand new client, as part of the onboarding process of like, what is the goal here? What is your plan? Do you need to grow your brand awareness? Do you need to make more money? Are you just looking to push a particular product range and the rest of it doesn't really matter? Whatever it is. I've spoken to many clients over the years that have very specific goals and a wide range of goals as well, right? Like you said, some people just need to be made aware of the stuff that is there. I've noticed incredibly targeted ads for me on Instagram very regularly. Like, there are multiple bands I have now bought merch and seen at gigs and bought records of and stuff because they're advertised to me on TikTok. Every other like reel is pretty much an ad for a band, of some metal band they're recommending to me, and it bloody works. Like, they know who I am. That we're saying earlier, like, we've given away our data so freely for so long now. The way you can get into customer data and be aware of, like, with paid, with such accurate targeting, I think that is kind of the key to it. And as annoying as remarketing can be sometimes, it has a very bad reputation. a lot of the times for me, when you see a similar kind of thing over and over again, or you're seeing an approach, and maybe this is me being a bit too insidey baseball with the marketing side of things, like, oh, they're a brand that knows all their different channels and they're taking a multi-channel approach to it. I appreciate that. I'm a marketer and I want to think that they do good marketing. You know what I mean? Like, if I see a brand that is just, like you said, all eggs in one basket kind of thing, I'm like, oh, that's disappointing. I thought they were smarter than that. I thought they would have gone on a better approach than that.
Yeah, and kind of to put it back to the original discussion about Bookstop as well, and the work we did with them, they came to us with business objectives. For our website, we need to see a 25% increase in sales year on year. We need to see at least a 10 times return in ad spend on Google Ads to make that channel profitable. It was a channel-based one, but there was maths behind it. They took our, agency fees into it, and they took their percentage of refunds and everything into it. They really baked into the figures into it. And they gave us these, and they're like, we need this to make sure the website returns to where it was so we can continue running how we were, and that helped us. We can be like, brilliant. It's not PPC has to do all this. The website has to. So let's spread that evenly across this. Let's work together. And that helps so much more. It breaks down those barriers between organic and search and social, and it really brings everyone together. And on the point of remarketing, whenever I see remarketing, I think it's bad. It's because it's too repetitive. They're using the same ad over and over again. Really good remarketing, you don't mind it. If you're being remarketed a t-shirt for a band, but then they're remarketing you with tickets to their next gig or an interview they've done, so you can see that, or the latest reel they've done as well. You want to consume that information anyway. You want to attend their gigs to support them and buy their merch. You just don't want to buy the same t-shirt 6 times.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that variety, and I think, again, the broader conversation of a multi-channel approach, right, is tailoring that content to the right places for the right people. Don't just copy your ad copy and make the same thing on social as you would on Bing or Google or wherever, soon to be perhaps ChatGPT as well. We're going to get LLM ads at some point. I know the Marketing O'Clock guys have basically got their watches on countdown. Greg and Shep are just waiting for that to kick in. And I think for me, when it comes to that, kind of like multi-channel approach, you've got to be aware of what you're doing on each one. And like you said, aware of the audience, tailoring it properly. We mentioned like short form versus long form content and all that kind of stuff, right? I get really frustrated when I see weird formats that don't work on a particular platform. What are you doing a landscape thing on an Instagram reel for? What are you doing a portrait thing in somewhere else, or some weird kind of format? And again, maybe I'm just being a marketing snob. Maybe I just can't turn my marketing brain off. But I think for me, that shows an awareness of the digital space, right? And I think customers are becoming more and more discerning with that sort of stuff. We're more and more aware of the platforms. Users are more and more aware of how marketing works and the digital marketing practices and all that kind of stuff, right? So I think you need to be kind of proving you know what you're doing, not just chucking stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
I think a big part of that is making it fit naturally into whatever platform you're in for the user's experience. Ads work best when you don't realize they're an ad, and it's not jarring because it comes up in, portrait mode when it's meant to be landscape, or vice versa. Some of the things that a pet peeve for me, and they might work really well, is when they ask you to turn the phone around to watch a video.
Oh, no.
And I'm just
Get
like,
in the bin, go away.
Yeah, it's like, if you're doing it as a TikTok reel or a story, keep it portrait. Don't make me turn my phone around, because in 2-3 seconds I'm having to turn it back around. And if I'm on a bus doing that, or I'm in the train doing that, I look like a moron not knowing how to work a phone. Just rotate it. But it's making it natural, because you asking someone to turn it, it's easier for them to swipe on to the next one. Integrate it into what they're used to. And that's why TikTok ads see such good performance, because they look like TikToks. And because of the way TikTok is, that you're just browsing, you're just flicking through, you're not sticking to one profile, you're not sticking to one theme. You can have random content come up, and they will still watch it and they'll still consume it because it's TikTok.
I mean, you've even got the auto scroll feature on TikTok, right? That's just like, it'll scroll for you. You don't even need to press any buttons or swipe. And then I've definitely noticed how long it pauses on the ads.
Yeah.
Well, auto scroll, 5 videos, and then you hit an ad. It's like, we'll just play this ad 3 times in a row. Just, I know you're doing the washing up right now, so you can't touch your phone. So you're going to hear this ad 15 times in a row until you dry your hands. And this is a very real traumatic experience, as you can hear from my from a real world example here. We're trying to listen / watch TikToks while doing kitchen work. It's like, no, you need to be able to scroll properly.
See, we're 2 different people here. If it was me, I'd be trying to use my elbow, my nose, anything to just swipe.
Oh,
I wouldn't go to
I've
dry my
definitely
hand.
scrolled with my nose, like leaning over, just like, no,
Yeah.
what, go, move, like, yeah. And then, like you said, don't do that on the bus. You'll look mental. Like,
Exactly.
trying to swipe on your phone with your nose or your elbow, just like, oh my god. Let's cap things off with some recommendations, shall we, Chris? I'm going to kick things off with an actionable tip that you would recommend for the viewers and listeners to go and check out right now, today.
Yeah, so we've already talked about Marcus and the Clock plenty, so I'm not going to plug them another time. But for me, a book worth reading is Dr. Hannah Fry's Hello World. It is a lovely short book that you can read in just bite sizes per chapter, and she talks about machine learning and AI in our everyday lives, from the US legal system to how Walmart knew a woman was pregnant before her family did, and how it's being used in Google and other places that us marketers would know. It really helps you understand the flaws in machine learning and how you need to, give it corrective training rather than just historical training, but also the opportunities there are there to use it to improve our lives. Yeah, it's a brilliant book. You can get it on Candour anywhere you want. So
I absolutely love Hannah Fry, and was a keynote speaker at Brighton SEO a couple of years ago as well. Brilliant to see Dr. Fry in the flesh and doing the actual thing. Because I've seen so many documentaries. It's a brilliant audiobook as well. That's how I read Hello World. I know some people don't consider that reading, but I do. How about a tool or a piece of software you'd recommend for everybody to check out?
for me, this is a left field one, and it is a calendar or a project management tool. I use Asana and Google Calendar to plan my life. My personal life is Google Calendar. If it's not in there, I'm not going or I'm not doing that thing. And the same is for work. If it's not in my Asana, I don't know to do it, because if you tell me, it's out my ear straight away. So I live by those. And for anyone who wants to be more efficient with their time, anyone who wants to be more organized, I highly recommend just using those 2 simple tools. Other options are available just to streamline kind of what you've got and keep yourself organized.
Yeah, I live and die by my Google Calendar as well. I have got a personal one shared with my wife, so we know where everyone is at the same time. Like, we've got a thing we need to go to on Saturday, and I know you're out for work drinks on Friday and whatever, all that kind of stuff. And also the work one in there as well, so you know what's happening on what day. I know I've got a podcast with Chris at 3. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. Like, if I can show my screen here, it is absolutely mad how many things are in my calendar. There is my May, for example, that loads up.
Wow.
I can't see it, but there's a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of
And it's all
colors.
color coded to like work or personal, or a lot of that purple stuff is like, remember to take your medication and stuff like that. It's like simple little things like that. I am right there with you, mate. I need some organization. Otherwise my ADHD brain will just bounce off and never get anything done.
We're the exact same. We have a household email address that we do all the bills, emails to, but we use a calendar for that. And we have a sub calendar per person in the house, including the dog. Reggie has his own sub calendar for his appointments, for any time we're taking him with us somewhere. So we know, we've got to get the twins in the car and the dog, So we do the same.
Brilliant, brilliant. I love that. If more people's dogs need calendars, that's the real takeaway from this episode, right? Follow in Reggie's footsteps, folks, and get your dog a calendar. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, mate. It's been a real pleasure digging into everything from AI Max to search cannibalization and the brilliant tools you guys are developing over at Evoluted. Where is the best place to follow you and what you've been working on in PPC?
Follow me is on LinkedIn. I also have a link tree, which will be in the description below, where I'll be sharing all of the resources, all the new tools that me and the Evoluted team are releasing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, mate. I appreciate you doing the work for me as well, by the way, just pointing out down below. So all the links of everything we've mentioned, Chris's talk, that should be available on YouTube, hopefully sometime soon from Brighton SEO, links to Evoluted, LinkedIn, Linktree, all that good stuff will be down below in the video description. Thank you so much for joining me, Chris. It's been a pleasure. We managed to not talk about D&D or Star Wars for any of it. We stayed very professional. I'm proud of us. But we might need to have another separate call to get to nerd out, right?
Maybe we can do kind of like after dark one where we can talk about other stuff, not
Ooh.
marketing, and we can just geek out a bit. So yeah, thank you for having me though. Like,
that sounds like that, mate. And that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for watching or listening, wherever you're watching or listening. Thank you once again to Chris for joining me. And please do go and check out Chris. Go and follow the awesome work he's doing in PPC. Like I said, he's one of the favorite people I follow about PPC because I want to keep up to date on this stuff. I mentioned a few people. I always mention Greg Finn from Cyprus North and Marketing O'Clock. I always mention Anu Adegbola, and Chris is right in there in my top 3 PPC people to follow to keep up to date with what is going on in the paid side of our industry, because I think it is still a really relevant and important thing to keep track of, even as SEOs, right? I think this is a message, if you listened to the podcast before, you're aware that I'm very passionate about. And like I said before, thank you so much for watching or listening. If you haven't already, like I said at the top of the show, please do like, subscribe, review, all that good stuff. I hugely appreciate any support you can give us. And coming up in the next few weeks, I have a fantastic group of guests. In fact, I'm going to get the list up right now for you. Just give you a little taster of what's coming up over the next few weeks, because it's a good list. I have Manuel Mededu, I have Matt Kalis, I have Jarno van Driel, I have Alex Wright, I've got Harry Evans, Ramon Eichmann's next week. Ramon's a good friend of mine, and we're going to be talking about a lot of future of search kind of stuff. Ian Ferguson, Kreshmir Choluka, loads of awesome people. That's just throughout sort of July and going into August, as well as I'm going to be recording in studio with Seb Atkinson. He's going to make his return to the show very, very soon as well. I've even got Jordan Dimitrov and Pablo Lopez, Alex Galinos. So many cool people coming up over the next couple of months. I am already a month ahead of myself, I think, in terms of recording. So I'm well ahead of recording, and it's very, very cool and very, very exciting. I have recorded most of those ones I just mentioned to you, and I've even got a few more I didn't mention just to keep things under wraps and keep a little teaser going as well. So stay tuned for a list of amazing guests, interesting topics over the next couple of months, all building to Brighton SEO coming up very soon. We'll have a live podcast again end of October. Me, Tasman and Sarah will be back again with another live podcast. I'll be speaking at Brighton SEO as well, and I've got my MMA fight for charity coming up in November as well. I'll put links for everything that Chris mentioned, links for everything that I've talked about on the show down in the show notes and video description down below, so please do go and check them out if you haven't already. And in the meantime, have a lovely week. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.